All right, so this meeting is being recorded, and the end of the summer definitely are, people on vacation. We know that, but we are getting started, and hopefully more people will come. All right, so there was a request for a class on our relationship to our parents. Keep it of aim. And it's good because this is constant. This is difficult. This is something we want to do well. We'd like to also gift our children with a head start on this one. And what they see in us also creates their relationship. So why do we have this big, enormous commandment? So we're told that we owe our parents for their part in our creation, even though, of course, we understand the God factor, but that doesn't take away the fact that in this physical world, our parents are partners in creation. We owe it as gratitude for everything they've done for us. And it also helps us become people just by having this inculcated in us, this respect for our parents. It helps us become people that respect authority. And that in turn creates a certain type of society. Yes, come. All right, we were talking about respecting and honoring our parents. You could come right here. All right, you're moving your seat to right here. So there's two parts to this commandment. There's two parts to this mitzvah. The idea of respecting and the idea of honoring. So what's the difference between respect or what might be translated as revering, reverence, and honoring our parents? So reverence, our sages give us a few examples, and they give us a few examples for honoring. These are only examples. This is just to get like the scope of, oh, that's what it means. So reverence means don't stand or sit in their place, don't contradict, don't do anything that harms them.
Sorry, reverence is what again?
Reverence is like the stuff like yira, the fear-based, which is giving them that sense of like, wow. So we're not going to stand or sit in their place. We're not going to contradict them. We're not going to do anything that harms them, harms their interests. Basically, in general, when our sages are giving examples, there's a certain principle they want us to understand. And that principle is don't do anything that demeans or denigrates their dignity. That is reverence, which again, we might have different applications of what that means, but anything that would be demeaning to my parents, anything they would view as demeaning, anything they would view as denigrating, that's what I'm not supposed to do.
Parents will so why, like, is that like?
So you're saying is the very act disrespecting, or you're saying you have a conversation with them? In other words, they're saying we expect you to eat our standard of kosher, and you're like, well, I'm married now, and my husband's more relaxed, or I'm more relaxed, something like that along those lines. That's an interesting question. Interesting question. A lot of it sort of would depend probably on, are the parents viewing it as like a personal affront, or is they're just upset because they want you to be on a higher standard? No, in other words, question is, so we're talking about honoring the parents. This was a personal request from someone who's not here, but will watch the video, and obviously this is exactly designed for you because you are here. So the question was, what if someone's married or just independent and their level of religious behavior is less than their parents, and their parents are upset about it? Would this be considered a lack of honor to your parents if you don't behave as per their standards? Right. So I'm a little more cautious. That's why, there's various rabbis, there's the this rabbi, there's the this rabbi. Now you get to know which personality of each rabbi, who you, oh, hi, I wonder what's sneaking up my leg.
When they get married, their way is like a different perspective than they grew up. Like as a parent, also have to like support them, I guess.
So what I'm saying is there's definitely that room. But my point was, we don't want to do anything that's offensive to them. So therefore, if you're being very careful, let's say like a person's more relaxed in their dress than their parents like. In front of your parents, you should dress more modestly. Why? Not between you and God. You and God, you're comfortable. We're good. But you and your parents, you're not good. And if you know this is hurtful to your parents, and this is offensive to your parents, and this makes your parents feel bad, you're not supposed to do things that make your parents feel bad. Now, well, it's their fault. They're supposed to get over it. But and we don't view it that way. Again, some things you can't change. Let's say the person you're getting married to, they don't like, So there's a certain point where we say, if this person is good, like it depends why they don't like him. You know what I'm saying? There's a certain point where we say that, yeah, no, it's your choice. As long as it's, the rabbis or your mentors feel this is the right person for you and there's nothing wrong in it and this is good for you. Well, it's a mitzvah to get married. There's a person you're gonna get married to, that's good. So you do the mitzvah. But I would think if there's a way in front of your parents to not be offensive to them, then that would be a very virtuous thing to do. Tina?
To what lengths should you go to do that? Like, for example, if they come over and they don't like the way, I don't know, their child is dressed in, or they don't like the way you're doing something, like,
so there's a few questions here. So one question is, again, all questions are supposed to be directed to Shira, not to me. Okay, so that's her answer. So no, in-laws you have to treat the same way like your parents. Yes. Shira knew she did not want to come to this class. Okay, so I would respectfully disagree, meaning a lot has to do with your tone. It says in the Gemara that a person could feed his parents pheasants. Pheasants is this like very special, expensive type of fowl. And for that, they could like lose their olam haba, so to speak, be chased away from this world. And a person could have his parents grinding a millstone and they could get their whole olam haba from it. So Rashi explains like that's really weird. You're putting in our term. A person could give his parents the most luxurious food and accommodations and he's messed up for it forever. And the other person puts his parents to work and he's like, wow, the saint. So Rashi says, because a lot has to do with how you're doing it, your attitude. And if you would tell your parents with love and compassion, I really want to give you food, but I don't have any food. But if you can help me grind this wheat and we can make flour and then I could make food for you, I so much want to give you food. This is the only way I can do it. You're like so saintly because you're giving them so much love and attention and respect and compassion. And if someone says, here, Ta, here's your food. Well, it's the most expensive food in the world. Who cares? The way you gave it to your parents was so derogatory, was so demeaning that instead of getting brownie points for it, you get all these demerits because you treated them so disrespectfully as you gave them the best food. So taking the example, if a person says to their parents or in-laws, which we're told you're supposed to honor the exact same way, if a person would say to their parents or in-laws, listen, you don't like it in my house. Well, if you want to come to my house, this is our way. And if you don't want to come to our house, that's cool. Okay, that's what it sounded like. That was what it sounded like. Right. So if you could take that message but package it in a way that expresses a lot of love and respect for them. Like, I understand in your house, you're very, very careful. And that's so awesome. And, you know, God willing, someday by us as well. But for now, this is where we're holding, and this is how we do things. And I understand that might not be so comfortable for you. And I don't want in any way for you to feel uncomfortable, especially on the Shabbos. So if it's too uncomfortable for you to be here with us on Shabbos, I understand. And, you know, God willing, we'll see you on a weekday where it's less offensive. But if you can come, that would be so wonderful, and we would really love it. Wait, did you hear the difference between me and that other version of the story? Did we say the same thing? No, but I'm saying it's not an excuse. That we said the same thing. I said the same thing you said, but I said it with a lot of love and compassion. so I would get full points for being respectful with giving the same message you gave, but I'm getting full points for being respectful. And if you would say it the way we heard it, get like low, bad message and bad example for your children. But going back to this question, if the point would be, okay, so you're giving an example of someone on a different level, and this is how you're respectfully saying it over to your parents or in-laws. But I would still think, like, I could think of somebody I know who's not religious, and his parents know he's not religious. But in front of his parents, he acts religious. You know what I'm saying? They know he's not religious, but at the same time, they never see it. Is that respectful? Yeah, that's very respectful. That's very respectful. Is he fooling them? He's not in essence fooling them, but he's allowing them to fool themselves, if you know what I mean. He's creating an atmosphere where what we see is what's real. This is what we see. No, they know he's not religious, but at the same time, in front of them, he'll wear a yarmulke, he'll keep Shabbos. You know, he's acting in a way that's respectful of them, and that's very beautiful. As they thought about it, they know he's not religious. In front of them, he'll eat kosher, you know, like, because it would hurt them to see him defiling the Shabbos, not eating kosher, even not wearing the yarmulke. This will be hurtful to them. So the fact that they know it, that's like, you know, you don't have to really think about that. What you see in front of you is respectful on a certain level, and that's nice. Now, does everyone behave that way? No, many people don't behave that way. But if you really want to see, if someone's not religious at all, why would they care about honoring their parents? Because it's not just something on my scorecard between me and God. It's something a person could feel as a personal value. Like, I do respect my parents. I do want to give them love and honor, and they did raise me and they did love me, and even if we don't have the greatest relationship, still, as a person, even not as a religious person, if you're not religious, what are you bothering to do this for? Because as a person, I do want to honor my parents, and I do understand that me defiling the Shabbos in front of them, eating not kosher in front of them, will be very painful to them. I don't want to give them that pain. Do you know?
How does the fly to a parent that has like mental health or personality?
Okay, extra question. So that was going to be at the end. So there's first of all, there's parents, then there's mental health issues, and there's abuse, right? So those are three separate categories in terms of how we're expected to honor our parents. So obviously within people, and our sages discriminate between mental health and abuse, because sometimes people with mental health issues can be abusive, but they're not really abusive. They really have mental health issues. And then there's someone who's just really abusive. It's not a mental health issue. They're abusive. Extreme controlling. Many parents are controlling, but there's extreme control, which could be abusive, and could also be a mental health issue. And then there's normal controlling, like lots of people want to control other people's lives, you know. So in terms of mental health, if someone has a mental health issue, then we're really supposed to try to the best of our abilities to respect them. It's actually interesting. It's brought in the Gemara. It's brought by a non-Jew. You know, I'm sure you all know the famous story of Dama ben Nesina, who so much respected his father that. Never heard of it? Okay. There's a famous story in the Talmud. Somebody here must have heard of it. His name was Dama ben Nesina. Okay. Okay. I was referencing the famous story to tell you a story that's not as famous but relates to this question. So the famous story, and this is a non-Jewish person. So the story, without giving a tremendous amount of window dressing, is one of the stones in the choshen, in the breastplate of the high priest, had fallen off,
And they knew this very rich farmer, jewel dealer, non-Jew, Dama ben Nesina, had such a jewel. It was a very beautiful onyx stone. They had 2 onyx stones on the breastplate, on the shoulders. And one of them had fallen off. And the sages heard that Dama ben Nesina had such a beautiful stone. And they went to him and they were negotiating and they came up with a fair price. And he comes back and he says, no, I can't sell it to you now. So they're like, okay, he wants more money. They raise the price, goes back, goes forth, goes back. And they keep raising and raising the price. And we all thinking this guy is like really not nice here. Like he knows we're stuck and he keeps making it higher and higher to a crazy price. And then finally he brings it out to them. And okay, whatever. They thought it was very not nice, but they were going to fork over all this money. And he said, no. I only want the original price. They're like, what's going on? He said, well, the key to my treasure box is under the pillow where my father was now sleeping. And each time I went and checked, but he was still sleeping. I didn't want to, awaken him to take out the key. So I kept telling you no. So you kept offering more money. I kept going back. But now that he awoke, I don't want to take any extra money. I'm not taking money for honoring my father. So the sages recount this in the Talmud as like such an amazing example of his respect for his father, that he wouldn't wake up his father to make so much money. And then even then, when the sages were, okay, I mean, this is the price we agreed on, he's like, I'm not taking money for something I was doing for honoring my father. So it's written in the Gemara that as a reward for this, there's the concept of the paraduma, the red heifer, which is very, very, very rare. There are 10 in all time. The first one Moshe made, the last one's made by Mashiach. So for Moshe and Mashiach, we had 8. So in Dama ben Nesina's flock, there was born a pure red heifer, which he sold and made a fantabulous amount of money from. And the sages say, this was in reward for his extreme kibbutz. So that's the famous story that I thought you knew. Now they said the story. Do you remember hearing it once? Okay, all right, we got one. Okay, so the non-famous story that I didn't think any of you would know is another story. In the Gemara, they go from story to story. So the Gemara says, another story about Dama ben Nesina. So he was a guy. Okay, so another non-famous story about Dama ben Nesina. He was, that's what I was thinking, better education. He was sitting among all the Roman nobles. He lived, I guess, in the land of Israel, but in the Roman part, he was a Roman guy, or he was a guy who was accepted by the Roman nobles, and he was wearing this beautiful, like golden silk cloak, tunic, as they wore the togas of those days, and very, very expensive, like silk golden toga. And he's sitting among all the important people there, and he's one of the important people. He was very, very rich. He was very, very important. And his mother comes up to him and she rips his toga and she spits at him and he just like accepts it, like all is cool. So in the Gemara, they discuss this and they bring it out like how amazing he is, but then they say like, did he have to take it or not? Like he took it, like here first of all, she's destroying this very, very expensive garment and she's completely embarrassing him. And he's like, nothing, he accepted it all. So the question is, did they have to take it or not? And the answer the Gemara gives is basically, in our words, she wasn't being abusive, she was mentally unwell. So if she was abusive and she was behaving in an abusive fashion to denigrate him, then he didn't have to take it. But since she was mentally unwell, then he did take it.
Is the difference the intention?
The difference is her state. Some people are mentally unwell, and again, a mental unwell and abuse could sometimes, one could morph to the other. But usually a mentally unwell person, it's sort of obvious they're unwell. Like I can think of someone I know who's not mentally unwell. They're sort of abusive. Now they sometimes flip are incredibly nice. You could think, oh, they have a personality disorder, but I don't really think so. I just think they're just very nice or very not nice. So for a person who is not well, we're supposed to be as tolerant as we can while still safeguarding ourselves. In other words, no mitzvah, or I understand, no mitzvah. You do not have to do this mitzvah to the degree that it creates for you harm. Like it says, for example, for a mentally unwell parent, the sages say, maybe you're talking here, not talking like a little child and their parent, you're more seeing like an adult child and their parent. Or parent that needs to be taken care of. So for a mentally unwell parent, it could be very, very, very draining, very difficult to take care of them. A lot of people actually in their old age could have mental illnesses There's paranoia that happens when one's really old. There's depressions that happen when one's, considerably old. Their whole lives, they were mentally healthy. At the end of their life, people have very extreme depressions and very extreme paranoias that make it very difficult to take care of them. So it says, our sages say that if you can't take care of yourself and you can hire someone that's going to appropriately take care of your parent, that's totally fine. That's totally fine, as long as the person's going to take good care of them. But well, it depends what type of nursing home. But I'm saying here, the sages are, in other words, what the sages are implying is normally you would want to take care of your parents yourself, even though it's difficult and takes up time and energy. But obviously we can all understand that far better than any nursing home or far better than any stranger's care is taking care of your parents yourself. A friend of mine who's a nurse, and her mother just passed away, and her mother was in hospice. She brought her mother to her house, and then at a certain point she just said she wants to do all the nursing care. So it depends. It depends. It depends if your husband is on the same page as you. If your husband appreciates what you're doing and you think it's a great lesson for your children, so then for those weeks or months, you're prioritizing especially if it's like a parent in hospice, you're putting them first, knowing there's a certain amount of time and knowing you want to do the absolute best for them. Like I'm saying, so her husband was a bit upset with her because, it's not a question they could afford it. You could have a nurse. Why are you not sleeping every night? You're anyway with her all day. And she had a very strong feeling. I want to take care of my mother myself. I want to give my mother the absolute best I can. And I know my nursing care is going to be better than any hired nurse's nursing care, obviously. So in general, there's a very great value in the Jewish belief and in the Jewish tradition, and the Jewish culture to take care of your parents yourself. And that's why for a Jewish family, the idea of putting your parents in a nursing home is viewed as sort of a last resort, last recourse, only if you really have no choice, because with in-laws too, yes. Yes, you are. It does. Yeah, I can find a few inside. Yeah, Ashley says that. I remember when I first got engaged. So the awkward question when you first get engaged is, what do you call your in-laws? So that's sort of awkward. So when I first met my very wonderful mother-in-law, she said, call me, by her first name. And I was like, okay, that's cool. So I was very comfortable with that. And that I no problem. And the first time I met her, I'm calling her by her first name. And it was very comfortable. And then after, my husband said to me, not husband at that point said to me, you're not allowed to do that. I don't know how to do that. That was so easy. So from then until my daughter was born, I just didn't call her anything. So I just avoid calling anything for, I don't know how long, it was about 2 years. And then when my daughter was born, it became very easy, because then she became Savta. Especially because I don't have a Savta, so it was really simple. So from then on, forever, it's Savta and Sapa. But my other sister-in-laws say Ima, and I just couldn't do it. To me, it didn't. Nothing against my mother. She's an amazing person. I love her very, very, very deeply. So maybe now I would be able to do it. But 30-some years ago, I was not able to do it.
Your
Daughters-in-laws call me?
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to think. That's a good question. I think my oldest one maybe calls me Schwigger. I don't know.
You have that conversation with them, or it's just
It was just
in the
in front of everybody. Well, it doesn't mean she meant anything bad. It was very awkward. Right, exactly. So I don't know if my second daughter-in-law calls me anything. I don't remember. Because she wouldn't say Schwigger because she's Israeli, and that's Yiddish. And she didn't say anything else. Something Ima, that's for sure. So I don't know what she said. Probably nothing. What I think, now the disclaimer is I have a wonderful time with my mother-in-law. I always have. She's not watching this video. She happens to be a most amazing, amazing, amazing person. I would think, but I'm saying the reason I would think, but this isn't true for my mother-in-law, but I'm speculating that for a mother, when a daughter gets married, she's not losing anything. But when your son gets married, you're losing something. Because when your son gets married, the other woman takes a front role instead of you. So I think a lot of mother-in-laws might feel like a little resentful.
I would say like, oh, that's a
Okay, but I'm not looking at it in terms of why you might be upset at her. I'm saying why she might be upset at you. That's why I think that's why. I mean, you're not at that point yet, but when you will feel it. You will feel it. God willing, you will feel it. And it's a very mixed emotion because, of course, you're so happy your son is getting married, but not really. You're happy, but there's a piece of loss. A woman feels a loss when her son gets married. A woman doesn't feel a loss when I don't think any healthy woman feels a loss when her daughter gets married, but a woman feels a loss when her son gets married. So maybe they feel lost when their daughter gets married also, but the son is for sure very common. The daughter is much more rare. I think that's why mother-in-laws might treat daughter-in-laws like a little bit resentfully.
But isn't it also because like men now follow their wives? Like usually they're, well, I mean like decisions in terms of like raising family, the way kind of home they have, where they live, like a lot of it has to do with like the wife.
But even going back 2,000 years ago, that's what it says in Torah, that when you get married, then you're gonna cling to your spouse, you're gonna cling to your wife. Until then you had your mother. I mean, that's what it says about Yitzchak, right? That when he married Rivka, he was comforted for the loss of his mother. So I think I understand what you're saying. Nowadays, maybe even more because the woman is more dominant, so she's even more losing her son. But I think in a lot of very normal relationships, nothing wrong. And it's something a mother has to understand and has to respect and has to appreciate, that thank God he has a good wife and thank God they're building a life together. And thank God I'm losing out a little or a lot. And that's what happens. And you just try to have a good relationship with your daughter-in-law. And then you don't lose as much. And if you have a bad relationship with your daughter-in-law, you lose a lot. And I definitely remember how a good friend of mine, as she was older than me, and none of my children were married yet, and she gave me a blessing on my birthday. They give you a blessing that your daughter-in-law should like you. And that's a very, very wise blessing. Thank God it was fulfilled. And it's a very, very, very wise blessing, because it could sometimes be a strained relationship. So anyway, going back to your question, and then we'll go back to what we're trying to talk about here. If a parent is mentally ill, we are supposed to respect the mental illness, understand, and a lot of times if you're dealing with someone mentally ill, you have to keep reminding yourself, because a mentally ill person could still be very hurtful to you, and you have to keep reminding yourself it's not the person, it's the illness. That's not how he or she really is, it's the illness. I'm blaming the illness, I'm not blaming them. And when you do it that way, it gives you the ability to like not get so hurt, and not get so hurt by them. I mean, like putting it in another situation. I mean, I remember once reading in one of these books on Down syndrome, how a parent was like so upset with the Down syndrome, like, what my child would be like if they didn't have this Down syndrome condition. So, hopefully, whatever, the parent grows to understand it's a package deal and it's, whatever. But I'm just saying, I remember hearing that, like seeing that, like parent who like said, this is the Down syndrome. This is my child. My child wouldn't be like this. This is the Down syndrome. Okay, we're gonna stop at this point. And so similarly, if someone's mentally ill, and this is true for if you deal with any mentally ill person, it doesn't have to be your parent, but of course, your parent, you have the most responsibility to love them and honor them and take care of them and not be disrespectful, to really remind yourself sometimes, this isn't my parent. My parent's a loving, wonderful person. This is the illness. And then try as much as possible to give them that honor, but still protecting yourself. So Shira said, is there room to protect yourself, to respect your spouse, to respect your children? Absolutely. You're supposed to respect all of that. Now it gets much more intense if we're talking about abuse. Because with an abusive parent, it's a dispute among the sages. Some sages say you still have the responsibilities to love and honor, and some say you don't. Yes, it's you'd have to speak to a rabbi.
Also,
But it's literally in the Talmud discussed, and after the Talmud, and the Rishonim and the Achronim. I mean, abuse is not a phenomenon of the 21st century. You know what I'm saying? There's always been abuse. And the sages discuss this. This is for the same thing the sages say. If a person was truly abused by their parents, are they responsible to sit shiva? Are they responsible to keep the laws of the shloshim? Absolutely, it's discussed. Are they responsible to keep the laws of the 12 months? Well, that's actually a point the sages, that's actually one of the conditions the sages look at. Absolutely, no. If it was once, or if it's something that still continues. Now, again, a person could say, well, it happened once, but the memory still continues and is affected, you know, like, that's why I'm saying it's a very, very delicate issue. And it's not something I'm at all telling you what to do, but I'm just saying it's literally discussed. Are you responsible to sit shiva? Are you responsible for the shloshim? Are you responsible for a year of mourning? Are you responsible to say kaddish? And the sages say, well, if somebody was truly abused by their parents, saying kaddish for them could be a very painful experience. I'm saying kaddish for him, for her. So I mean, you don't know, but I'm just saying, you don't know. So I'm just, so it's something you ask the Rav. It's something you ask the rabbi. I'm not at all posketing, but I definitely remember a situation that I was involved with a child who they were, you know, sexually abused by their father. When he passed away, they didn't have any, you know, I mean, he was in prison. Like, you know, yeah. They put him in prison. And
wow. So did they have to sit shiva and
they didn't really.
Okay, got it.
They didn't really sit shiva. So the question is, this is what the sages focus on. Are any of these things for the mourner, or is it for the deceased? And if it's for the mourner and the mourner doesn't have these feelings, should you bother doing it? And if it's for the deceased, but if you don't owe him anything, should you do, him or her anything, should you do it? Should you not do it? I'm not at all saying what to do. I am saying that literally is something our sages discuss. And literally, it's something, if a person was in that situation, if you know a person in that situation, it's something to talk. So again, some people would, just because, what are they going to make a poem? But be like, why aren't you sitting? Like, I mean, a different thing is, if someone is cremated, you don't sit shiva. Yeah, that's halacha. If someone's cremated, you don't sit shiva. So. No, that doesn't take. I don't know. Well, it could be true. I don't know. I could ask. I never heard that, but that doesn't mean I would know.
I also wonder though, like when you have a family and your own children, and you have this parent that was either mental health issues, abusive, whatever. How do you, like, are you allowed to, like, have space and protect your own children? Like, how do you protect your own children?
So that's what I'm saying. That in these situations, that's what I'm saying. In these situations, you definitely have to protect your children. And that's what I'm saying. There's also the discrimination of mental illness and abuse. So if there's mental illness, then for sure, we try to be as respectful as possible. We try to understand it's the illness and not the person. And we try to give that message to our children. You know, so-and-so, Bubby, Zaidi, Saba, Safta, Grandma, Grandpa, they love you and they act this way. It's because of some, like, just sometimes I think the best way to think of it is, if the person was physically ill and treating you not nicely because they're so physically ill, would you tolerate it? Yeah, you'd understand. They're in such pain, they're in such agony, they're going through so much. So you'd be nice. I mean, like, you know, but if someone's mentally ill, what's the difference? I wouldn't say the term sick in the head. I would say it in a nice, euphemism. No, I wouldn't say this, especially because kids would probably just repeat it right back to the person. Oh, your mommy said you're sick in the head. When did you get sick in the head? When are you going to not be sick in the head? What do you take for being sick in the head? No, I would not say that. But I would sort of say, you know, when grandma treats you that way, you should know she's not feeling well. And that's why she treats you that way. When grandpa treats you that way, it's not grandpa, he's just not feeling well now. And that's why he treats you that way. So I would say it like that. And child, they don't understand how they're not feeling it. They're not knowing that they're acting that way. And I'm saying that's the same thing that's ourselves. It's not them. They're not feeling that well. If it was a physical illness, I would accept all the stuff they're giving me, because I understand they're in such pain, they're in such stress, and that's why they're treating me so not nicely. But that's different than abuse. So especially in an abusive situation, we're going to stop at this point because this really cool thing I want to say about Parsha. In an abusive situation, we're told protect yourself, protect your spouse, protect your children. And nowadays we can form a virtual relationship. You can send emails, you can send texts, you can send WhatsApps, and that's it. Within abuse, you should create very strong protection. There's no thing to suffer abuse. But again, if someone's in a specific situation, they should speak to a rabbi, because as I'm saying, this is very disputed among the sages, where some sages say you have zero responsibility to give them any respect or honor. Some sages say you have absolute responsibility to give them respect and honor, and obviously different, people that are not as extreme in this and not as extreme in this, and somewhere in the middle. So anyone in that situation really needs to ask a very competent rabbi, this is my situation. To what degree am I supposed to respect? To what degree am I supposed to protect myself? Okay, so we're going to stop this, which we didn't really do much of. That's okay. Or whoever's going to watch this video. All right, so this is this fascinating piece from the Parsha. So in the Parsha, Parshas Re'eh, so I was looking through it Saturday night, like what should we talk about? And one of the sections, it's an interesting Parsha, speaks about kosher animals. So I wanted to share this really, really what I think is fascinating concept with kosher animals that really is an amazing, I don't want to say proof, we don't need a proof, but it really shows how Torah is absolutely divine. So I'm going to give you a little bit of, well, let me give you background to why we're going to say this, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of animal anatomy to explain what the coolness is here. So in Jewish law, we are allowed to eat the flesh of animals. Now, originally, man was not allowed to eat animals. Man only became allowed to eat animals after the flood, meaning, yes, from Adam until Noah, there was no permission to eat animals. No, it was, God could have taught Adam the same way he taught Noah. It was because you have no right to take their life. From Noah, man, after the flood, man was allowed to eat animals, is reward because man saved the animals. Meaning Noah and his children for an entire year, the flood was 40 days and 40 nights. They were actually in the ark for a year, for a complete. Yeah. In other words, now in return for the fact that the species only exists because of us, because our ancestor Noah saved your ancestor. That's the only reason there are any cows in this world, any deer in this world, any goats in this world, any sheep in this world. They wouldn't exist. We're not killing out the species, we're taking some. So we have a right, that's what it's explained. We have a right to take from the animals. We can't decimate the species, but we have a right to take from the animals because Noah saved the animals. And it wasn't easy. He worked incredibly hard. It says he was up all day and all night because some animals are nocturnal and they eat at night. And some animals are up by day, and some animals need this food and some animals need this food. So once it says he delayed feeding the lion and he bit him. He was pouring blood from this bite as he's literally slaving away. It was not an easy job. Well, he just goes by and sprinkles some things in the cute cages. No, it was really, 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 really difficult. And for an entire year, they were in the ark for an entire year. So for an entire year, all day and all night, imagine that exhaustion and that hard work to make sure that not one animal died. Because if one animal died, there goes the species. There was just two, besides for the kosher ones.
Were there any animals left behind that we don't have anymore?
So the sages speak of the unicorn actually. It's written in the Talmud, yes. It was. There's a reference in the Talmud to a unicorn. Yes, it speaks of a horse with a horn. It doesn't say it's the most beautiful animal or this or that. It's a horse with a horn.
Rainbow sparkles.
No rainbow sparkles, no white shiny, but a horse with one horn, which is a unicorn. No, I could find for you that source. I've seen it inside for the unicorn. So the question with dinosaurs is, there's nothing, as the world understands dinosaurs could never be, because the world is 5,781 years old. So their whole idea of millions of years and the gradual formation and decimation of, so there's a lot of, so the simplest answer is, which is the answer the Lubavitcher Rebbe gives, not specifically about dinosaurs, about other things along those lines, nothing to do with dinosaurs, but you could apply the answer, is that's how God created the world. In other words, the same way God could create the world without bones, he created them with bones. He just created. Yeah, they made it up. In other words, the Rebbe doesn't specifically say about dinosaurs, but he says it about, like, I've explained to you, like they scientifically base on certain piles of sand. Well, it takes this many years for the sand to be shifted, and for the sand to be shifted, and for the sand to be shifted. So to get a pile of sand like this, the world must be, I don't know, 5 million years old. So the Rebbe says, and why can't you say God created the world with the pile of sand? Like, why are you assuming the sand was flat? God created it like this. Or tree rings, carbon dating tree rings. I don't understand that, familiar with that concept. The Rebbe says, and why couldn't the trees have been created already with rings? Why not? Why are you assuming there were no rings and the rings came generation after generation? So I didn't say dinosaurs, I said unicorn. Oh yes, I said, I'm not saying there was any reality of dinosaurs. I don't know that. Unicorns, I know. Okay, so you see. Okay, anyway, let's get back to this idea of the parsha. So there's the concept of shechita. So God allows us to slaughter animals, kosher animals, but only in the most stay for this is really cool, in the most pain-free way possible. And that's why the knife of the slaughterer has to be super razor sharp. They have to sharpen it between each slaughtering. They have to sharpen their knife. They have to test it with their nail. It has to be no nicks, absolutely sharp. And they're trained to make the cut as fast as possible. So super sharp, super fast. But then there's still, of course, all the sensation in the brain that could create pain. So we're told, no, the way slaughtering works, it cuts away the flow of blood right away to the brain. So within literally on the clock, less than 2 seconds, the blood pressure lowers. There's so little blood in the brain that there's such a loss of blood pressure that the animal falls unconscious and therefore has absolutely no pain. Okay, now that's a cool thing, but does it really work that way? And now let me explain to you something about animal anatomy that's really, really amazing. I didn't bring in pictures. I sent you the picture, right? I explained this concept. So I can send you the picture. This is so cool. Okay, so how animals work, actually all mammals work this way. We work this way also. We're a mammal also. But how all mammals work is they have feeding into their brain like a circle of all the arteries that are flowing the blood. And from that circle of arteries, the blood flows into the brain. That is called the riti mirabili. Okay, I actually looked it up. How is it pronounced? Riti mirabile. But of course, if you ever go on Google and have something pronounced, by the way, they give you like 5 different ways to pronounce it. Okay, but that's supposed to be the common way. Riti mirabile. Okay, great. So this is like the central repository of all the blood that's going to go into the brain. Now, how does that riti mirabile get blood? Well, there's the arteries. There's the arteries flowing in the front of the animal that feed into that riti mirabile. And there are arteries in the back of the animal flowing into that riti mirabile. So when the slaughterer, with this razor sharp knife, makes this fast cut, he cuts off the carotid arteries, which are the arteries that flow into the front. They're the front arteries. It's the front of the animal that flow into this riti mirabile, and all that blood is cut off. But the shochet, the slaughterer, does not touch the back ones. He's not allowed to, actually. It would make the animal invalid if he sliced through the back ones. So the question is, wait a minute. You're saying you have such a razor knife and such a fast cut, and you just slice through all these arteries. So therefore, there's no blood in the brain. So therefore, there's such a loss of blood pressure that the animal falls unconscious within less than 2 seconds, so he doesn't feel pain. But what about all the back arteries? And here comes this amazing, amazing thing. What they have recently found, recently, I don't know if recently means like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, very recently, they realized something really weird. All normal mammals have arteries in the front and arteries in the back that directly feed into this retin mirabile that then feed into the brain. Except for, weirdly enough, animals that have split hooves and chew their cud. All animals that have split hooves and chew their cud, their circulatory system is different. And the back arteries do not go straight to the retin mirabile, which then goes into the brain. Instead, the back arteries flow into the front arteries. And then from the front arteries, it goes in there. So if you have a sheep or a goat or a cow or any other kosher animal I can't think of at the moment, when the slaughterer makes that sharp, fast cut in the carotid arteries, which are in the front, what he's effectively doing is draining all the blood, because the back arteries flow into the front arteries. So all the blood drains. Immediately there's a tremendous loss of blood pressure in the brain, and the animal falls unconscious and dies literally within those 2 seconds, literally. And all the blood drains out, which is why, by the way, kosher meat is so much healthier, because the blood is draining so fast from that animal. But if you were shafting a pig or a horse or any other mammal, if you made that fast cut in the front, it's still getting all the blood from the back. The blood from the back is going straight at the retin. It's still in pain. It doesn't lose conscious because it's still getting all the blood from the back. So it's just an amazing. And then the blood, and then, so they have the plane, and also the blood sits in the animal. The blood's not draining. And that's why horse meat, or pig meat or anything like that could so quickly become contaminated because it's sitting in its blood for so long. That's why in Jewish law, first of all, the blood drains out so fast from that cut because it's all the blood. And then whatever blood was left, what do we do with our kosher food? We salt it. What's the purpose of salting it? To get rid of the blood. We salt, soak, wash, soak, salt, wash, soak, a cycle. So you get, no, it's really true. Kosher meat is much healthier for this reason, that all the blood is gotten rid of. Anyway, but I was just when I first read this concept, to me, besides, of course, understanding that shechita is the literally most pain-free way to kill an animal, which is very interesting because, there's a lot of like PETA and these organizations try to claim that it's creating more pain in the animals versus stunning it or banging it on the head or some other crazy thing. But this is really, really designed. But also to me, it's like, look what God did. This is how all mammals work. But for some reason, mammals that chew their cud and have split hooves, their circulatory system is different. So that's an interesting concept. And it's the question is like, which came first? Is it because the nature of the animal is something that God says, yes, you can elevate, and that's why I'm going to give it split hooves and chew its cud? Or because it has split hooves and chew its cud, are the signs of something that in essence is kosher? So God gave those signs to something in essence kosher? Or are the signs themselves what create the kosher? It's something debated among the rabbis. But the general answer, not to get into the answer to which came first, is that every animal that we're allowed to eat, its nature is something that we can elevate, and its nature is something that's positive, kind, gentle. And any animal that's nature we would not be able to elevate because it's very, as we would say, animalistic. It's very predatory, it's cruel, or it's another way. God didn't allow him to eat, because when you eat the animal, you absorb its characteristics. That's why the famous question is on the bird. One of the birds that are not kosher is called the chasida. Chassid means kind. And Rashi says, why is she called chasida? Because she's so kind and generous to her friends with food. And then the question is, but wait a minute, anything that's not kosher means they don't have good qualities, and that's why we can't, in essence, eat them. Whatever the physical signs are, God said, no, I don't want you to eat this animal because its nature, you wouldn't be able to elevate it, would actually give you bad quality traits. So, but this animal's called kind, her essence is kind. So the answer is, but she's only kind to her friends. She's kind to her friends with food. She shares food with her friends. And that's not a Jewish version of kindness. So every animal that is kosher, every fish, every fowl, every mammal that is kosher, the nature of that animal is something that we can elevate and is not giving us any negative quality traits. And any animal that will give us negative quality traits, we would not be able to elevate, and therefore God said, don't eat. So that's an excellent question. I've always wondered that myself. I've never seen an answer to that, but because you would think, well, what do they need that? The world is full of water. But I don't know. But that's what it says, that the water was burning. So since it says the water was burning, I always assumed there must be fish. But it doesn't say literally anywhere if there were, if there weren't. So that's something I've wondered. I've wondered myself. Of course, the Yassin was created by the 7 days of creation. So where was it? That's what I'm saying. I don't know if they survived or didn't survive, meaning I don't know. I wondered that question myself, and that's exactly my question. On one hand, did they just survive in the water? Because it doesn't say they were taken into the ark. On the other hand, it says the water was burning. So if the water was burning, how could they survive? I don't know. I'll see if I can find out that answer. I've always thought about it.
Like with Jonah and the whale, I think I time like did that before Noah?
Way after.
Oh,
Way after. Right. So Jonah, the great ark, the great flood. So it says that there. So what Shira was just referencing is when God created the world, He created the king of the fish is called the Leviathan, and it says that there's 2 of them, a male and a female, and that God immediately killed the female because it says if the male and the female procreated and there were more of them, they would take over the whole world. So that first one, that first female, it says the flesh was salted and preserved for the feast of Mashiach. And then there's this one other, the male one, the Leviathan, that it still exists. And with Jonah and the whale, at one point, Jonah was taken with the whale to the Leviathan because that whale, it's in the Mediterranean. It's very interesting because that whale, it was that whale's turn to go to the Leviathan and to be fed, to be eaten. And that whale was like, today's my day to be, I've got, like every day, another huge animal, another huge sea creature went to the Leviathan and was its snack for the day or for that time period. So this whale that was big enough that Jonah was inside of it, it was supposed to be the food of that meal. So he was like, sorry to tell you this, but we're about to go to be food. And Jonah said, I'll take care of it. And when he came to the Leviathan, he scared it enough that the whale was exempt and Jonah and the whale got away. So yes, that Leviathan was around. It's written, it's all written in the Midrash. And it says that when Mashiach comes, there's going to be a massive battle between the mammoth Leviathan, sea creature, and the mammoth mammal called the Shor Habar. And the Shor Habar will kill Leviathan with its horns, and the Leviathan will shaft the Shor Habar with its fins, and both of them will become the food of the Mashiach feast. And we've talked about that. That's a whole long. It's we're not supposed to go overtime, but the Shor Habar is the mammoth. We can't understand the proportions of this animal. That's like the ultimate mammal. And the Leviathan is
it a whale?
No, a Shor Habar. It's a mammal. It's a land creature. And the Leviathan is the ultimate sea creature. And this is literally physically, there's a Leviathan Shor Habar. It's also, yeah, absolutely. No, it's bigger than any zoo. It's huge.
We don't know. Somewhere, imagine in all the mountains or somewhere. I mean, there's plenty of places in this world that nobody's been to. And nobody's found the Leviathan either. And there's gonna be this mammoth battle between the two. And it says, wait a minute, how can we eat the flesh? Mela, a fish, you don't have any laws of shechita, but how can we eat the flesh of the shor habar? It's being killed by a fin. A fin is jagged. It has to be smooth. You have to have a smooth shechina. It's not a fairy tale at all. So the answer is because it says, yeah, unicorn's not a fairy tale. This is not a fairy tale. It says because those laws are when man is the shochet. But for the shor habar, who's going to be holding the fins and slaughtering it, is God himself. And with God, he can be beyond those laws. He knows how to slaughter, even with this jagged thing, to make it absolutely smooth. Spiritually, they represent the two levels of energy. The level of energy that's the revealed energies of God's, which is like on the surface, like the mammal. And the Leviathan under the sea represents the deepest, most esoteric energies that are like completely beyond any perception. But they are these physical creatures, and there will be a physical fight, and we will eat the flesh of both. Well, we see. I don't know if we'll see the fight, but we're going to eat. I don't know where the fight's going to be. If we're going to there to see it, but we will eat the flesh. And it says that the dessert of the meal of Mashiach is going to be mun. The mun. We'll all experience what the mun tastes like. It'll be the dessert. It's interesting for the Babcha Rebbe. Yeah, that's what you could do with the mun. But I think we'll probably just want it to taste like mun. Why waste mun and make it a food? You can always have the food. Here you can have mun, but you could cook whatever you want. So it's interesting. The Babcha Rebbe never, ever quotes that about the mun, but that's clearly in the Midrash. But the Rebbe many hundreds of times quotes this idea that we will eat the flesh of the Leviathan and the shor habar, and we will drink a special wine. It says this wine was preserved from the beginning of time. It's called the Yayin HaMishumar, which means the wine that is preserved. And it's preserved since the beginning of time. And the Rebbe literally hundreds of times quotes how we're going to be at this meal, and we're going to literally eat this fish, and we're going to literally eat this meat, and we're going to literally drink this wine. And this is the feast that's going to enter in the absolute revelation of redemption. Yes, so all these things physically are going to happen. So that would be an absorbing of those energies, just like the Ayin HaMeshumar. I could tell you lots about that also. No, they're all positive, only positive. It's godly energies. It's called Kabbalistically I mean, I can tell you the Kabbalistic term, but it's not going to, so I said in English, the light which is revealed, which is the shor habar, because it's a mammal on the earth, and the light which is so much more intense than that it's concealed, which is what the Leviathan represents. We can have a whole class on them. I could spend a lot of time talking about them.
How long will the festivities of Mashiach be?
We don't know. It doesn't say that it will be 7 days or not. We don't know. I'm assuming it's be at least 7 days, but it might be much longer than that.
One more animal-related question I've been curious about for like is, do we have a responsibility as Jews to like help extinct animals or like people are all about extinction or whatever? Is that like God just? Like,
you're saying to help preserve the species?
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of like preserving gorillas or something. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of that, and I feel like I don't know. As Jews, do we believe in that, or is that like Hashem just?
He's doing what he's doing. That's such an interesting question. I mean, I would say that we have an obligation to be humanitarian. That's definitely, so we definitely, like, again, Judaism is, it's very interesting because even though animal rights groups like say, oh, shechita is cruel, or oh, kaparas is cruel, but we don't believe that. We don't believe either of those are cruel, and we do believe that we want to treat animals as humanely as possible. So in theory, I don't know how much you have to invest all your energies in it, but in theory, if there's something that's preserving a species, seemingly that would be the more humane thing that a species should continue. So in theory, I would speculate that it would be something that would be considered a good thing to do. Again, is this what you should ultimately put your energy into? I don't think so. But is it something that we would say that's good, that people are trying to be humane and preserve animal life? Yeah, we believe in being humane to animals. That's not only part of the laws for Jews, it's part of the Noahide laws. Right? That's one of the Noahides have 7 laws, and one of the laws is to not eat the flesh of an animal while it's still alive.
not to cut off, not even to, you don't have to eat it, not to cut off. Right, exactly that. And, but also I'm saying like, don't cut off people. They used to do that because it's like has the most life energies. It was especially in a lot of pagan rites or primitive rites where they would literally like cut animals up and they would eat that meat as raw as possible, maybe completely raw. And it also aroused a lot of like, there's a lot of sexual things going on then, like a lot of like raw animal energy, raw sexual energy. Literally it's just part of primitive rites, pagan rites, and yeah. Well, the animal would die. They were cutting it up. It is even today. This happens even today. I mean, we wouldn't think of it like in the city of Chicago, but I mean, someone told me, one of my Noachites, that even today in the like farm countries where they have animals, if they're going to castrate an animal, which means they're cutting off a piece of it, they castrate it and they eat that part. And they say, oh, that's a really delicious thing. They're not killing the animal. They don't want to kill the animal. They want to castrate it. Castrate is to cut off its parts that it can't produce any more children. For whatever reason. If they're doing that, they eat that part. That is completely, absolutely Eva Minachai. It's a living animal. You cut off a part and you're eating it. And they do that till today.
That's so like.
Anyway, all right. So not my fault. We went over, but we are stopping now. Thank you so much for joining. Yes, I'm ending it.